Hey guys, welcome back to another video in the series where I'm going to show you how to build a music player application from the ground up. In this episode, we're going to do step 3 of our mission, which is to create a storage space on DigitalOcean.com, and then to hook that up into our Spring application and create a storage service so that we can upload files and also view the files within the storage. Alright, so if you don't have an account on DigitalOcean.com, then go ahead and do that. You can log in with Google, and so there's a lot of things you can do on this website. You can create VPSs, you can do containers, and you can have databases, database hosting. You can host your applications, which we're going to do at the end of this series to host our full stack application. You can do Kubernetes. You can do volumes, a bunch of cool products that DigitalOcean offers for really good pricing. But one of them is called Spaces, and this allows you to basically have a storage server specifically for storing files. So for example, static files, like if you want to have an application, a web application for a user can upload, images, so like an image storing application, then you could use a DigitalOcean space to store the image files and then grab them from the space to display them to the user on the website. So that's essentially what we're going to do. We're going to have a DigitalOcean space that we upload MP3 files to, so we store our music files, and then on the front-end application, we're going to grab those files and use them to play the songs to the user, okay? So once you set everything up, once you get the account created and perhaps set up some billing information, you can do create and then click spaces, and this will allow us to create a new space. So you can select whatever region you want, obviously. I am in Texas right now, so I'm just going to select San Francisco. I think that's probably the closest to me. So I got San Francisco, and also you can enable a CDN, a content delivery network, and we can use this within our web application to serve static files to the user, which is exactly what we're going to need to do. So in the example that I said before, you can take images for like an image application and display them to the user using a CDN in this case. You don't have to use a CDN, you can actually just grab them directly from the space, but a CDN is 70% faster, it says, so it just helps you out, I think. Just deliver the, like if you've ever used, CSS frameworks like Bootstrap or anything like that, any CSS type of library or file, then you can bring it in usually using a CDN rather than having to download it. And we're going to do this for our MP3 files, okay? So, and we can leave the settings on default, doesn't really matter. Okay, and let's see, allow file listing. We're going to restrict it to only us for now. It says only users who connect to the space using access keys can list the contents. Yeah, we don't really want people to freely know what files we have stored on our space here. It probably wouldn't hurt anything, but just for security, I guess we'll do that because that's not really something we want people to be able to do. Okay, so let's give our space a name. We'll call ours Music Archive because that's the name of our application that we're building. So you can access it. Oh, it's already taken. Wow, okay. Music Archive. How about we call it Music Archive Cody? The name doesn't really matter. The user won't see this name here. This is only for us to access, so it doesn't matter if it's a crazy name, okay? So the project is just something that you set up when you're using DigitalOcean. You have your services under a single project. So if you don't have a project, it'll help you set one up, obviously. So just select one and now click Create a Space. So now it's going to create your little space for you, and so you can store files on them, which is really cool. So here we go. It's really nice. Let's say that we want to upload a file. I can do that. So I have some files up here. I have an image file. So if I just drag and drop it, you can select whether you want it to be private or public. So if it's public, this means that you can freely access it using the CDN or the other ways of accessing it. So if we click upload files, or file rather, it's going to upload it. And then we can access it by either the origin or the CDN, which is the edge. Link here. So we can click this and now it's going to open it and you can see it. So it's like serving the static image file to you and you can view it in your browser, which is really cool. So yeah, something like this is very common for applications that need to store static files, or CDNs are also used for CSS and JavaScript libraries, like I said before. Anyway, now that we have the setup though, we can view some other information. We can see that the total amount of storage that you're using is 154.6 kilobytes, which is very helpful. And then the new folder, you can, if you want to add some better organization for this, you can specify a folder so that everything. You can move this into the folder, and obviously that'll be organized better. But yeah, it's pretty simple to use. It's not really complex. The hard part is going to be connecting to it using code to upload files and also view the files. That's the tricky part. So this is using a technology called S3, which is provided by Amazon. It's pretty old actually. I believe it was created in 2006, so I thought it would be newer, but it's not. So what we can do is use the Amazon S3 SDK, which is available for many languages, luckily, including Java, so that we can access the space here using the Amazon SDK, so the library that we can import using Maven, okay? And that's how we're going to download files and view files in our upload files and view files within our project. Anyway, so let's go ahead and get rid of these. We don't need these. So delete, there we go. One final thing we need to do on DigitalOcean, the website itself, is to create an API key so that we can access the space here using the S3 SDK. So we'll go to API. So it'll be here, spaces access keys. So we're going to create a new one, generate new key. We're going to call ours music archive. And yes, there we go. So there we go. We can use this this key here and the secret here to inside of our application to access the space. Now we're going to do the part where we hook up our space into our Spring Boot application using the Amazon AWS SDK. So we're going to need to find the Maven imports for that. So I have links that I'm going to provide in the description below. The first one is for that. So it'll give you the Amazon SDK for Java version 1.0. And then you scroll down here and you see some information. So you see this dependency management thing here, which you can bring in. It's called the bill of materials, which essentially allows you to, well, you specify a version for the bill of materials, which is the overall version for the SDK, I believe. But then under that, for your regular dependencies that you bring into the project, you can specify specific things like Amazon services like S3, EC2, DynamoDB. Those are different Amazon services that they provide on AWS, but we only need S3, right? But as you see, there's no version provided in this dependency here. This is because the bill of materials will automatically provide the necessary version for this dependency. That's why you have this here, okay? So what we're going to do is, I'm going to move this to my screen here. I'm going to copy the bill of materials thing, go down here under my dependencies tag here, and just paste that. So now we have the bill of materials provided by the AWS SDK. So we're going to go back and copy the dependency for S3, because that's where we're going to use to connect to our DigitalOcean space. So copy that. Now go back here and put it inside of your dependencies. So click the Maven reload button here and it should bring that in automatically for you. Great, it looks like it already did it, no problems here. So one thing I need to tell you is that we're using the Amazon AWS SDK version 1 for Java. There is a version 2, but I found that very tricky to figure out, and the documentation doesn't seem to be as good as version 1. Like, I couldn't find any S3 documentation except for their transfer manager thingy, which is, tricky to bring in. I don't know, it was just not a good experience. But luckily the AWS SDK version 1 is still very good. It's very well maintained and it works well, so we don't have to worry about using any old technology. It works and it gets the job done for us. Okay, so the documentation for that I'll provide in the description below will be here. And if you go down here, you can go to code examples and then go to S3, and you have all these examples here for doing operations on the spaces that you have, or they're called buckets, but for DigitalOcean we'll call it a space. Okay, and inside of that space you have what's called objects, which are essentially just the files. Files are called objects in the S3 SDK, and you have all this documentation here to see how to do things, examples. So these examples here will teach you how to upload an object, list objects, download objects, pretty much exactly what we need to be able to do for this application. So check that out below if you need that on your own, if you want to try using it on your own or for future reference. So back in our Spring Boot project, we're going to create a new package called services, and this is where our storage service is going to live. So the storage service is going to be how we interact with the DigitalOcean space using the S3 SDK or the AWS SDK. Okay, so click that. So we have a new storage service class, and we're going to annotate this as a Spring service so that we can use it in other components within our application. Alright, so the first thing we need to do when interacting with S3 is get an Amazon S3 object. Well, this will allow us to do everything we need to do, you know, uploading files, viewing files, all of that. So we're going to have this as a field in our service so that we can access it with any of the service methods. So private, final, Amazon S3. There we go. Space, we'll call it, because that's how we're going to connect to our space. And within the constructor of the service, so when this storage service is created by Spring, we're going to run the code to initialize this Amazon S3 object. Okay, so public storage service, this is a constructor. We're going to need a new Amazon AWS credentials provider. And the documentation for this is provided in the link I just showed you. So if you want to see how to do all of this and know how I figure all this out, this is how you do it, okay? This is how I learned how to do it. So AWS credentials provider, that's going to be equal to a new AWS static credentials provider. There we go. And inside of that, we need a new AWS credentials. So we're going to do new AWS or basic AWS credentials. And we're going to need an access key and a secret key. And this may look familiar, right? We just generated that on DigitalOcean. So we're going to go back to DigitalOcean and copy our key and our secret key. So copy that, paste it, that's our access key. And then go back and copy the one under that, which is the secret key. So paste that under there. There we go. So these are our access credentials, our basic AWS credentials that we're going to use to access our space, hopefully. And so we're going to close this. That's the end of that. So now we have a AWS credentials provider, which we can use to hopefully connect to our space and initialize this Amazon S3 object. So we're going to do space is equal to Amazon S3 client builder. Amazon S3 client builder, standard with credentials. So we're going to provide the credentials, that we just created. There we go. And then with endpoints configuration, new AWS client builder, endpoint configuration, and we're going to need to provide a service endpoint and a signing region. So this will be the endpoint of our bucket, or our DigitalOcean space, and then the region of our DigitalOcean space. So let's see if we can find that information. Let's go back to our space on here. We can see that we have an endpoint here, and we can use this endpoint for that. This is what it's asking for, the service endpoint. So we'll put that here, and then now we need the signing region. So if you remember when we were creating the space, the region was San Francisco 3. That's why this endpoint here starts with San Francisco 3. That's the subdomain. So we're going to just use that. This will be our signing region. Okay, that's all we need for the endpoint configuration. Hopefully that'll work. And so finally, to finish this off, we'll do build. And this will attempt to build the Amazon S3 client here. So now we can use this in some other methods that we're going to create to do different things like uploading files, getting all of our songs, etc. Okay? So let's do the simple one, which is to list all of the files inside of our space, okay? So we're going to do public list string. So we're going to return a list of strings, which is going to be the song file names. So get song file names. The example code for how to do this is very clear. This is how I learned how to do this. So first we're going to need we're going to list all of the objects on our space. So we're going to do list object result, list objects version 2 results, v2 result. It's going to be called result is equal to space dot list objects v2. And so the parameter that we provide for this is going to be the name of our space itself. So if we go back, the name of our space is called Music Archive Cody. So we'll copy that, then go back here. And hopefully with luck, it should use that client builder that we created, or the client, that we created along with the name of our space to list all of the object results. So we can then do list S3 object summary objects is equal to result.get object summaries. So the object summaries will simply be information upon the object stored within our space. So information upon the files. Like I said, an object within our space is simply a file. So that's why it's called object. So let's go ahead and just print out each of these one by one. Let's go ahead and return void, just so we can test it out before we return anything. So we're going to print out each of these objects one by one to see what information we can actually grab from this, okay? So we're going to do objects.stream, and we can stream it because it's a list, a collection. And we're going to do for each object. How about that? There we go. S3 object summary, sout, S3 object summary dot, and we have all this information here. We have the bucket name, the key, last modified, size, e-tag, owner, storage class, all that information. Very useful. And we can also set some information here. Pretty cool too. So let's try just doing toString to see if it actually just prints out all of it. If the toString method is not overridden, obviously by the SDK, then it's not going to print anything useful, but we'll test it out to see if it does. So let's go back into we need to now figure out a way to call this method here so that we can print out all of this to test it out. So where are we going to do that? Let's go back to our main class here and just do that here. So we're going to auto wire our storage service so that we can test it out within the main class. So private static, the reason it's static because this is a static method main. You can only access static stuff within static. So private static storage service. Hopefully that should be auto wired in by Spring now. So then inside of our main here, we can do storage service dot get song file names, and that should print out each of the files in our storage space one by one. So hopefully if you're watching this, you have a strong background in Spring, or at least you know how basic Spring works. So essentially what's going to happen is when the Spring application starts, it's going to look for all of the services that we have created. So this is a class annotated with service. So Spring will pick this up as a bean and create the storage service class here and manage it for us. So it'll call the constructor here, so it'll run the code and hopefully connect to our space. And then it'll keep that storage service object within the Spring IOC container so that we can access it within any place in our application. In this case, we're accessing it within the main method of our application, the main class. So basically, after it creates the storage service, we're going to auto wire it. Spring is going to inject it into this field here so that we can use it wherever you want in this class, okay? So yeah, hopefully that provides some insight on what's going on here. So let's go ahead and run this now to see what happens. Looks like we have an exception here. It says cannot invoke storage service.get file names because storage service is null. That's strange. So what I'm going to try doing instead is a different way. We're going to try grabbing it from the application context manually. Application context is equal to that. And if you're not familiar with this, we've done this in our Spring series. If you haven't seen my Spring series, you want to learn more about Spring, then make sure to watch that. It's very good. So, okay, so we're going to do storage service. Storage service is equal to context.get. Oh, you know what? We might have brought in the wrong application context object. Make sure it's this one here from Spring. So now we should be able to do context.getBean. There we go. So now we can provide the storage service class, and hopefully it'll return a instance of storage service from the Spring IOC container so that we can use it within, use this method here. So let's run this now and see if it works. Okay, good. Nothing seems to be printed out though. And I'll tell you why. This is because we don't have any files within our storage space currently. So there's nothing to actually print out, right? So let's go back to here and we're gonna put some files within this. So take this, put it there, public, upload. Take this, put it here, upload. Oops, that one was private, but it shouldn't matter because we're accessing it using our key, so we should have private access. Okay, so now let's go back here and rerun this application to see if it prints out the files, the objects, as they're called, from our space. There we go, look. S3 object summary, music, bucket name, music archive Cody, key, copy of Java 17, which is just the file name, so our key is our file name. Our e-tag is just a unique identifier, it seems. Our size is the size of the file. Last modified. Okay, so really cool. So this gives us some good information on how we can proceed here. So now that we know that the key represents the file name, we can use this key here to return a list of all the files within our bucket, aka our storage space, but it's called a bucket in the S3 terms. Okay, so what we're going to do is loop through all of the keys and then add them to our list here that we need to return for this method. So we're going to return a list of strings, and we're going to add each of the keys from each of the S3 objects from our space into this list that we need to return. And actually the easiest way to do that is just to map each of these S3 object summaries into a key. So we're going to do that. So dot map, this is a stream operation. So we're going to do map objects S3 object summary. So return S3 object summary dot get key. So what this will do is take, so currently this will be a stream of S3 object summary objects. And then when we map it, this stream turns into a new stream of string keys. So now it's a stream of strings. Now we're going to take that stream of strings, which is a kind of a tongue twister, and do collect, and then collectors.toList. So this will return our stream of strings into a list of strings. There we go. And now we can do return. All right. And then we can simplify this as well. Okay, cool. So this is very simple code, but what we're doing here is we're getting each of the, we're streaming through each of the objects in this list of S3 object summaries, and we're changing each of these into a key here, which we're doing S3 object summary dot get key. So we're getting the key of each of those objects, which is representing the file name of each of those objects. And then we're taking that and creating a new list out of it and returning that list from the method. So now this getSongFileNames method here should return a list of strings, which is the file names of each of our files that we have stored within our storage space. So we can test that out. We can test the theory out by just printing out the result of this. So S out that. And now let's see what we get. There we go. We get copy of Java 17 PNG, copy of Java 18.png. Those are our file names. Pretty cool, right? And we can do the same thing with MP3 files, which is the storage type, the file type that we're going to be storing within this space here, because this is a music application. So it'll work the same way. Okay, so one more thing we need to do is figure out how we can upload files using the S3 SDK. This is also provided as one of the examples in the documentation that I showed you earlier. So we can create a new method for that, public void upload song, and this will be a multi-part file object, or not an object but a reference, because as you can see, multi-part file is a interface. You know what I mean. And so what we're going to do is take each of these multi-part file references and then upload them and upload the contents of them to the S3 bucket. Now the reason we're using a multi-part file here is because, as you'll see later, when we upload the file using the interwebs, using a post request, we're going to grab it using Spring, and that's going to be placed into a multi-part file. So essentially what I'm saying is that any file that we upload through HTTP, through a form or something like that, will be grabbed on Spring's backend using a multi-part file, which we can then pass into the upload song method. That's what we'll be doing. So what we're going to do is create a new object metadata file, or excuse me, object metadata is equal to new object metadata. So this will allow us to set some basic information about the object that we're about to upload to our space here. So object metadata dot set content type. Cool. So in this case, it's going to be like a MPEG file type, I think. MPEG content type, I mean. Because like there's different, content types for, different types of files, right? For a PNG, it's going to be, I think, a PNG. For a JPG, it's going to be a JPEG. I believe for MP3, it's going to be MPEG, something like that. So that's the content type of the file. This will just basically be set into the metadata of the file, the object that we're uploading into our space here, so that we have some basic information and we know how to serve it on our CDN, stuff like that, right? It's just helpful to have certain metadata stored for stuff that your files, right? Anyway, so now we're going to do space.put object. First thing we need is the object. We're going to get a object request. So put object request. So new put object request. So the first thing is the bucket name, which we know is music archive Cody. Music archive Cody. The key is going to be, as you know, the name of the file. So we're going to do file.getOriginalFileName. This will give us the name of the uploaded file, not name. I believe this gives you something else. So do a get original file name. There we go. And the final thing we need is the file itself. So we're going to do file.getFile. Or what is it? Get input stream. We can also provide an input stream, as you see here. So we're going to do that because we don't have like this doesn't give us an actual file object. So that's why we're doing that. Okie dokie, and it wants to add exception. There we go. Okay, so one final thing we need is the object metadata, which we did provide right here. So object metadata. There we go. So now hopefully when we provide a multi-part file to this, it should take that, create a new object metadata object, set some basic information like the content type, and then we're going to use the space clients here to put that file or aka the object into our DigitalOcean space with this basic information here. And the input stream is simply, you know, the actual data of the file itself, like the bytes and everything like that, you know, basic IO stuff. So we can actually just remove the try here. We don't need that since we're throwing it in the signature of the method. Okay, one more final thing I want to show you, just by the way, is when you upload this file, by default, it's going to be a private file, meaning that it won't be accessible to anyone who doesn't have your access key, your access credentials here. So if you want to give someone access using the CDN provided by the DigitalOcean space, the file, if you want to give them a link to the file, they can't access it if it's not public, right? Because of course when you upload a new file on DigitalOcean, it asks you if you want it to be public or private, and you can also change it in the settings of each file. But when you upload it using S3, by default it'll be private. So the way that we can make it public by default when we upload the object is on the end of this new put object request, we can do with canned ACL. So this will be the access control list, I believe, something like that. And this will simply allow us to set some permissions. So we're going to do canned access control list, and you can do private, you can do public read, you can do public read write. We're going to do public read. So hopefully when we give them the CDN link to be able to play the file, aka when our front-end application tries, you know, accessing the link, hopefully it should be able to access it without having to use our credentials here because it's public by default when we upload it, okay? Anyway, so that's actually it for this episode. We have created a new DigitalOcean space, which is how we store files. Really, really cool. It's pretty cheap just for storing basic, you know, static files for any application that you might need that for. This is a perfect use case. And then after that, we set up, we brought in AWS SDK, which is going to allow us to use the Amazon S3 library to connect to our DigitalOcean space, because this is using the S3 technology. And then we made a new storage service, a Spring Beans service that connects to our storage space and then does basic stuff like getting all of the song file names, which we're going to use on the front end to know what songs to grab from the CDN, which we'll see later. And then also we have an upload song method here, which we're going to use to upload new song files to our DigitalOcean space when we set up the upload functionality. So stay tuned for that. Anyway, so that's pretty much it. Hopefully you're excited for this. We made a lot of progress so far. This was one of the tougher parts. In the next episode, we're going to build the proof of concept application using Timeleaf on our Spring backend so that we can prove to ourselves that all of this works. Our song database repository, our storage service, all of that. We're going to build a simple front end so that we can test this out. Okay, so stay tuned for that. Alright, so that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. In the description below, I'll leave a link to the code for this episode so you can check it out. You can bookmark it, come back to it later. If you forget any concepts or you just want to review the concepts I taught in this video, I'll mark everything up with comments so you can come back and read the code without having to rewatch the video, although your reviews are greatly appreciated. So yeah, I'll leave a link for that in the description below, so make sure to check it out. And another thing is I'll leave a link to our Discord server. It's a big community for programmers. You can ask for help on your programming projects if you're stuck on something, or maybe you can get some new friends. If you don't have any friends, there's lots of people here. It's growing really fast. You can find lots of people who are passionate about the same things as you. For example, if you like Minecraft Spigot development, you can find lots of people who like that. If you like C++, if you like Java, if you like web development, it's a really, really big programming community. So feel free to join. There's a link for that in the description below. And the last thing I want to tell you is that if you want to support this channel, you can click the join button below this video, and you can join this channel as a member for as low as 99 cents a month, and you can cancel at any time. You get some cool perks like early access to all of my new videos, a cool rank on my Discord server like you see right here on the side, YouTube members, and also you get to see yourself on the screen like you see right now. So if that sounds cool to you, feel free to join. If you don't want to, that's fine. If you can't, that's okay too. I really just appreciate you watching the video anyway. And thank you. Thanks a lot. And that's it. So if you like this video, leave a like. If you want to see more, subscribe. And peace.